morning. So let's continue our concentrated, our sustained contemplation, as we're calling it, on this topic. Listening to hear the biblical vision of erotic desire and the mystery of man as male and female, or the mystery of salvation. And I have crafted that title intentionally. You know what? There's supposed to be a microphone. Is there a microphone?
You're fine.
Okay.
So we're...
In other words, I'm not being heard, so that's good. Is that what you mean? Because I'm referring to what it seemed to me to be the primary senses, the two primary senses of the Bible. The first one is hearing. Hear, O Israel. And the word of the Lord said. And then through hearing we come to see the vision, we come to see the mystery of God, who comes to the prophets as a vision, as an event, and finally he comes to us in the visible form. He becomes flesh, and he comes to us so that he can be seen. And now he calls on us. Now that he's in his visibility, he calls on us to listen to him, to hear his word is coming from the Father. So we're seeking to discern the biblical vision of erotic desire. So we have traced what perhaps would be a good boy and hand that out. We have spent the last two mornings, Sunday mornings, reflecting on what I've called the Zen of the biblical vision, or the Zen of erotic desire. Looking at indications from our own natural experience, from erotic desire, and also looking at three ancient texts from the world's religions and from the philosophers that have to do with erotic desire. So this morning, let's move into the Bible itself. We'll finally get to the biblical vision. And we're going to begin what I'm going to call part one of this general title. And it's going to come under the name of the title. I'm going to call it the erotic logos of creation. Erotic logos of creation. And I'm using this word logos intentionally, so it might be wise to explain the logos. This is a Greek word, obviously. It becomes a big word in the Holy Fathers, the Greek Church Fathers. They'll talk about discerning the logos of things, the logi of things. The logos of something is, you might say, its essential principle. Its spiritual principle. Its essential meaning. The definition, the principle. So, the erotic principle of creation, the meaning of creation, the central core essence of the creation. That's what we're going to be looking at. So, we're going to look at, we'll start looking at Genesis chapter 1. Let's read this first, chapter 1, verse 1 to 3. Let's read Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. And then let's look at, let's read from the handouts that I've handed out. From St. Maximus, the confessor. We'll contemplate what we hear in St. Maximus, and then we'll bring that back into Genesis chapter 1, 1 to 3. All right. In the beginning, God, and here the word is the God, so that if it were in the New Testament, we would take it to mean the Father. In the beginning, God made the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without. It was without. It had no sight. It was unfurnished. It was empty. And darkness was over the abyss, the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the water. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was beautiful. It was good. God divided the light from the dark. God divided the light from the darkness. And so forth and so on. God called the light day and the night, and the darkness he called night. And it came to be that there was evening, vespers, and there came to be morning. One day, one. God created the heavens and the earth. We have perhaps the most succinct definition of God. I don't know, what would you say? The logos of God. Can we dare talk like that? Probably not. But if we could, this is what we would do. We would go to 1 John 4:16. It says, God is. All right, smarty pants. What is agape? Come on. Agape.
Oh, love.
God is love. Agape. All right. Let's look at St. Maximus. And let's see what he does with let's see how he understands this passage. God is love. It's especially interesting because, as you can see in your handout, the word that he's focusing on is eros. Eros, in the literature of the Greek poets and philosophers, pretty much means sexual desire. So, how can you apply eros, sexual desire, to God? So let's see what he does with this. All right. In section 87, and for those who are on our extended viewing audience, we're looking at, you can find this text in the Philokalia, volume 2. So there's 4 volumes of this, 4 or 5 volumes of this. So you can find in Philokalia, volume 2, pages 281 to 282. We're looking at the 5th century of various texts, and we're looking right now at section 87. And I have put in the Greek, some of the Greek words, so that you can see how some of these, the word for love, for example, the English word for love, when you go into it has several possibilities. It can be several possibilities, and so it can become very important to know exactly which word is being translated as love. So, of love here, agape, and the erotic force, erotos, God, the Father, and in the Greek text of this passage from St. Maximus, God they have a definite article, so it's the God. And so I'm thinking that St. Maximus, Callistos Ware, or Philip Sherrard, whoever's doing the translating in the Philokalia, simply translated as God, translates it as God, and they know their Greek far better than I do. Nonetheless, it may be worth noting that in the Greek it's a God, so it's not. It could be God the Father, is said to be himself the originator and the begetter of love and the erotic force. You wonder how hard you can push St. Maximus if you're making something out of nothing. But when you read God as the Father, it could be taken, God the Father is said to be himself the originator, and the word is probodia, which means to, project from oneself, to proceed from oneself, in which case you could see the love that God is the projector of to be the Holy Spirit, and the force of which he is the begetter would be the Son. So in other words, you could play with this first sentence from St. Maximus, and you could see it as St. Maximus coyly, C-O-Y-L-Y, coyly, giving to us an image of the Holy Trinity in a very subtle, hidden way. So, going on. For these, love and the erotic force, being within himself, he brought them forth into the things outside of himself, that is, into the world of created things. In line with this, it says, God is love. And there you see the word is agape. It's not eros. God is agape. And again, he is sweetness, glucosmos. Can you hear it? Glucose. It's sugar. He's sugary.
Yeah.
He is sweetness and desire, from the Song of Songs, which is eros. So you see what he's doing. He's going to the Song of Songs, and he's saying that here is a description of God, which is telling us that God is eros. For what is beloved and truly desirable, and here he's using these words, agape and eros, is he himself. So in other words, what is beloved, that's agape, and what is truly desirable, in other words, erotically desirable, is God himself. With respect to him, with respect to God, on the one hand, inasmuch as, here he puts the two words together, loving desire, agapetic eros, loving eros, is poured out from him. As he, let's see, with respect to him, on the one hand, inasmuch as loving desire is poured out from him, he, as the begetter of it, is said to be in movement. But on the other hand, inasmuch as he is what is in truth longed for, and here the word is from erotic, erastan, so it's derived from eros, he what is in truth is longed for and loved, agape, desired and chosen, he moves the things that turn towards him, and which possess the power of desiring, each in the degree appropriate to it. Let's move to section 90. We should regard the erotic force, erota, whether divine or angelic, noetic, psychic, or physical, as a unifying and commingling power. Commingling, bringing together. It impels superior beings to care for those below them, beings of equal dignity to act with reciprocity, and finally inferior beings to return to those that are greater and more excellent than they. Now I said that in the Greek literature of the philosophers and poets, so forth and so on, eros its sense is sexual desire. Now, you see how St. Maximus is taking this word, eros, which means sexual desire, and he's baptizing it. He's transfiguring it. It might be useful for us to catch the force of Genesis chapter 1, verses 1, 2, and 3, if we were to pause for a moment and see how erotic, this word eros, has been baptized and transfigured by St. Maximus. And when I say St. Maximus, I mean the Holy Fathers. Because, I mean, it's interesting to me that in the Holy Scripture, this word eros occurs very rarely. You come into the Holy Fathers, the Greek Church Fathers, and suddenly eros is all over the place. And it's always referring to God. Most of the time it's referring to God. So, what's going on here? What are the Holy Fathers trying to say? So, let's just kind of do a psychoanalytical word association game. And let's take this word sexual desire, this concept of sexual desire, and let's just let's try to list some of its chief characteristics. Sexual desire. What would be some of the chief characteristics? What constitutes, what makes sexual desire so desirable?
Passion.
What's that?
Passion.
Okay. Passion, I would say, as a synonym to erotic desire, and I would want to do the same with passion as we're doing with erotic desire. What are some of, what's passion? I think okay.
The forces.
I think what you're trying to say is intense.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes, it's intense.
Yes, intense.
Do you want to make the distinction between lust and love?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's material here.
I think that,
Because lust is intense.
well, your first romance or your first crush
Okay.
is erotic in a way that lust is not. Because,
Yeah, but that's okay. I know. But why? What's in that erotic? What are you trying to say? You say erotic.
well, I think of love is that person becomes the lens through which you understand the world and your relation to it. Lust, the person is just a means to an end. There's no desire to merge in some way your.
So is your understanding of lust or erotic, whatever you're using, is it more intense than the lens?
I think lust. I think there's something larger. Your idea of eros. I think that the love or that crush, it brings in more of you than just lust. Lust is just.
All right. All of that may be relevant in another setting.
Okay.
But right now it's getting us a feel. But it's relevant. But in another, we'll get back to it, and it's going to be very important. For now, I just want us to, look in, what's in erotic desire. Okay, so it's intense. What else?
Consuming.
Consuming. Okay, I think even that. What do you mean?
Just dominates your thinking.
Dominates your thinking? Is that it?
And your body.
Yes.
Your being.
I would say it's all consuming. Yeah.
How about magnetic?
What do you mean? Attractive?
Attractive. You're not attracted to everybody.
Okay.
necessarily. You're only attracted to certain people that, or certain.
Yeah, there's something there. Okay, so alluring, attractive, attracting. So when we say it all and consuming, going back to this, I want to mean both. Okay, Joe, he must be a scholar or something. He said thinking, but then okay, we corrected him, and he got it. What did you say? The body, certainly the body, absolutely. But I mean even the soul, so in your mind, it just becomes all consuming. So, what else?
Madness, irrationality.
No. No, that takes us afield again.
Ah.
But you're trying to say something with that. You're trying to say something with that. But I think that gets to all-consuming.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with that for now. Because madness goes with the lust part. I want to put that all aside. We'll bring it back. But for now, that's not what we want to do.
The overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Again, I think that's kind of included in the all-consuming. So now let's bring in some more aspects.
Actually, you could use madness because it's.
No, we can't. I know what you mean, but we can't use it. We'll settle for all-consuming. Let's say invigorating. Does it not invigorate you?
Yeah, it's a certain joy.
Yeah, it's exhilarating.
Talking about love, right?
About unity and longing.
Longing, desiring.
Unity.
Well, erotic desire is the desire to unite.
Yeah.
Yeah, with another.
Yeah, it's with another, and it's, I think that's an important part. It brings joy, it's joyful. It's pleasant, pleasurable, immensely, absolutely pleasurable. Now, here's one reason why these descriptions of madness and lust, I don't want them now. We'll get into, I'll bring this in now. It's interesting, this word eros. My sources are somewhat ambiguous. They don't really help. But this, I think, might come from the preposition that means away from. And this, Rome, I think, comes from a word that means to flow. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but I mean, you can see how if eros is the word that's used for sexual desire, if it's associated with sexual desire, you can see why eros is most appropriate if its etymology takes us back to something that flows away from. All right? I think you can figure that out. But in all of this, when it's referred to God, and again, remember, the Bible, it doesn't have the word eros. I should be more specific. The word eros occurs very rarely, but then the Bible was not written in Greek. It was written in Hebrew. And there are other words in the Hebrew. And if there are, and if not, there are other words that refer to sexual desire or sexual passion that are referred to God. And if not a specific word, there are certain concepts, certain images. For example, what is Israel's relation to God? What is God's relation to Israel?
It's a lover, right?
Yes, bridegroom and bride. Ezekiel 16. Is very passionate. And when Israel goes chasing after idols, what are they called?
Harlots.
Harlots. And you know what the word Baal means in Hebrew? Baal or Baal?
I think it means master.
Your master, husband, Lord. And so it's not that the Israelites are going after the Baals, it's that they're not going after their own Baal, their own Lord. Moreover, the word testify Jerusalem, Lord, blessed the Lord, thy root and thy birth are of the land of Chaldea. Thy father was an Amorite, and as far as thy birth, in the day wherein thou wast born, thou didst not bind thy breast, and thou wast not washed in water, neither wast thou salted with salt, but thou wast cast out on the face of the field because of the deformity of thy person. And I passed by thee, and I saw thee polluted in thy blood, and I said to thee, let there be life out of thy blood, and increase I have made thee as the springing grass of the field, so thou didst increase and grow. And I passed by thee, and I saw thee, and behold, it was thy time. And here the Greek becomes very euphemistic. And the time of resting, in other words, a time for love, the time for climbing to the marriage bed is what it's meaning. And I spread my wings over you, and I covered your shame, and I swore to you, and I entered into covenant with thee, with the Lord, and thou becamest mine. Is described in the wedding night. So this image of erotic sexual desire applicable to God is in the Bible, but not as eros. But now, going back to this, when eros is referred to God, it obviously cannot mean sexuality, because sexuality is of the body. But can you see how, eros, this phenomenon that we're giving to which we're giving the word eros, what we're describing, all of this, is pure eros. This is eros in its natural state. This is why I don't want madness or lust in here, because madness and lust refer to eros in its perverted form. You fell in love with your first love, you didn't become mad. In fact, you probably felt like you came alive. Suddenly the sun was shining, even when it was cloudy. And there was a certain lilt to your step. I mean, and there was nothing, perverse about that at all. It was joyous. And you see how this phenomenon that we're referring to as eros, you see, it's like its consummation is in the sexual act, but eros itself is what's going on with you. You're coming out of yourself. You're seeking another. Can you see how this eros is, by its very nature, humble? You see, it's humble. Your first love, even your love of 43 years. She doesn't use me for herself. I don't use her for myself. There's this, man and wife, there's this, there's humility that's between the two, as each one learns to give himself to the other. So when so eros in its pure, most natural state is the movement of humility. Now, saying that, there's a specific passage in the scripture that is highly erotic when we start talking about eros in these terms. I'm not going to, does anybody have some thunder rumbling down in there? You want to give a shot what that verse is? How about Philippians chapter 2, verse 5? What does it say? Let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus. That even though he was in the form of God, he thought it not robbery to be equal with God. But he took what does it say? He emptied himself. He poured forth from himself. And what did he do? He took the form of a servant. He entered the womb of the Virgin, and he became one with her. This is nuptial terminology. This is the nuptial mystery. And he became what she was. And she became what he was. You see, he became Son of Man. She became the Mother of God. So you can see now how appropriate it is to be talking of God in terms of this erotic desire, the erotic force. When we understand erotica, eros in its pure, natural state. So let's take all of this. I'm going to erase this off the board. Let's take all of this and let's apply it to the creation. see what vision of the creation we come up with when it comes into view. It says, in the beginning. How should we understand that? Let me find my notes here. In the beginning. All right, this is a little exercise that might, you might need some help on. I've had the advantage of. Remember that when you're looking at an image, you don't see all of it right away. You have to listen to it. You have to soak it. You have to just let it work on you. And so this whole business has been working on me now for how many weeks? Well, even weeks before we started this class. So I may see things now that you won't see until a few weeks from now.
43 years.
Okay, excuse me. This has been working on me for 43 years. When we now read Genesis 1 and following, in the light of this erotic vision of the Holy Fathers of the Church, what do we see? Let's just start out with the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, or God crafted. He wrote a poem. You know, the word is poem, from poema, a poem. So God crafted a poem. He wrote a poem. God wrote a poem. When He made the heavens and the earth are a poem of God. So in the beginning, what might be the beginning now, if we see it, if we're looking at it in this erotic setting? What would be the beginning? In the beginning, God created the heavens. Eros. Exactly. In His eros, in His erotic love, in His humility, in His, I embraced it. Did somebody write it down? I'm sorry. In His joy, in His joy, in His intense desire, all the things that we listed, in this tingling joy that He felt within Himself to anthropomorphize God. In His erotic love, He created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and it was empty. Do you see how that is very close in its imagery to Ezekiel 16? Again, I've lost my place. I left it. But you were cast out. You were lying on the field. You were covered with blood. You were deformed. Nobody wanted you. So I passed by you, and I nurtured you, and I raised you, and I made you into a beautiful woman. Your breasts developed, and lo, I passed by you again, and you were ready for love. Do you see how it's all basically the same imagery as Genesis 1 and 2? In the beginning, in His erotic love, out of His care for us, out of this overflowing, overwhelming fullness of joy and humility and love, God brought forth the heavens and the earth. Well, the heavens and the earth were as yet without form. And so I think it's, it may be significant. Remember the myth of the Numa Elish that we read last week from the Absolute Tiamat, where you have the sweet water and the bitter water just mingling together. And remember how the world comes into being from them. It's just, it's the image of sexual intercourse, obviously, man and woman. Apsu is the male, Tiamat is the feminine. But everything comes out into being just kind of a spontaneous generation. Just kind of this unconscious, impersonal force, erotic force that's at work in all of this, and it's just kind of on its own. But you look at the scripture here in Genesis, and you see that you have to soak in the image. You have to let the image work on you, and you see that God, from At every step of the way, God is carefully crafting the thing. He's not. There's no spontaneous generation. I mean, maybe there's a spontaneity to it, but it's all in the embrace of God's work, God's hand. And so the creation is being carefully crafted in the erotic love of God. So in the beginning, the erotic love of God. In the beginning, God created. So God created. He made a poem. He made a work of art. He made a work of love. He made the world to be his painting, his sculpture. It wasn't just an abstraction. He made it to have form, dimension, weight, and all of that. And God said, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. There was earth, there was that form and void. I skipped ahead here. And the Spirit. And the Spirit of God was moving over the water. We'll go back to section 87 here. What do we suggest that love might be? The first, of love and the erotic force, God the Father said to be himself the originator and the begetter. We're suggesting that love is spiritual. It's of the Spirit, because it's that which proceeds from the Father. And the erotic force would be the only begotten Son, because he's that which is begotten of the Father. So when it says the Spirit was moving over the face of the waters, you see what the love of God was moving over the face of the waters. Let's see. Okay. Let's go to 89, section 89 here in your handout, in order to illumine the deeper vision that's hiding behind the words of Genesis 1. The erotic impulsion, kinesis, could also be movement, the erotic movement of the good that pre-exists in the good is simple and self-moving. It proceeds from the good. Let's trinitize this. Who is the good? Of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, who would you identify with the good? The Father. Oh, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Why are you calling me good? No one is good but the Father. So the erotic impulsion of the Father that pre-exists in the Father is simple and self-moving. It proceeds from the Father, the good, and returns again to the Father, the good, since it is without end or beginning. This is why we always desire the good and union with the good. Or, this is why we always desire the Father and union with the Father. For loving union with God surpasses and excels all other unions. So, the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. The love of the Father was processing from the Father. It was moving in love over the waters, which is also a symbol of the human soul, an image of life, human life, and proceeds from the Father and returns again to the Father. Listen, the Spirit proceeds from the Father, rests on the waters, returns to the Father. What image did I just draw? Somebody saying what it?
Jesus.
Jesus. Keep going. Jesus. What about?
He's ascending.
Descending
And
and ascending. Yeah. So how about that? You look deeply enough, you begin to see the mystery of the ascension, or even the incarnation, and the Lord's Pascha, and the ascension. You see his baptism, you see his birth, conception and birth in the waters of the Virgin. You see his baptism in the Jordan. You see his descent into hell, and you see his ascension into heaven in that little verse. The Spirit of God, the Spirit of the Father, was moving over the face of the waters. It's a movement of love, erotic love, whose character is all that we describe when we refer to a sexual desire. But it's not sexual, and yet it is sexual. If by sexual you mean the capacity to create life, it's a life-creating power. I have here an alternative translation in section 89, starting with the second sentence. This is why we always desire the good and union with the good. Or you could also, looking at the Greek, you could also translate it like this, and I think it's just as legitimate a translation. It's why our desire for the good and union with the good is an eternal movement. Or, this is why you can't get rid of your erotic desire. Your erotic desire is always going to be with you. Why? Because what you're yearning for is not, to get it on with another body. What you're yearning for is God the Father in his Holy Spirit through the Son, Jesus Christ. For love and union with God, love and union with God surpasses and excels all other unions. That means that to be united with God, the Holy Trinity, in the Lord Jesus Christ, through his Holy Spirit, is a union that excels the pleasure, the tingle, the intensity of sexual union. And I want to stress this because, we have a number of single people in our parish. Oh, we have a number of single people here.
But can I raise?
No, you may not.
Oh, okay, all right.
Can I?
No, just a minute. This is the point that I want you to sit on and soak in. You're single. And it may be that you're single all your life. Are you cheated? Not at all. Not at all. It's when we willfully or blindly or ignorantly take this erotic desire in us and we willfully direct it towards our own ends. That's when we feel like we're cheated. Because we can't ever get what we're looking for. But I would also ask you to see how, when we do that, you have perverted your erotic desire in that no longer is it humble. It is no longer the movement of humility. Now it's become mad. Now it's become lustful. It's become selfish, self-centered. And as such, where is its center? If you were to draw a circling movement, what would you do? How would you draw it? It start from me and go right back to me. Erotic desire, what does it say in section 89? The erotic impulsion of the good that pre-exists in the good is simple and self-moving. It proceeds from the good. Who's the good? Are you the good? No, of course not. The good is the Father who transcends all things and returns again to the good, so that this movement of erotic desire that is flowing through us comes from a source that transcends us and is trying to get to a source that transcends us. And this is what we're caught up in. You exist in this river, if you will. Again, that brings to mind Ezekiel chapter 44, the flowing from the east gate of the temple. This mighty river, it was the erotic love of God. And as the river flows from the temple, remember, the river gets deeper and deeper and deeper, until finally the man who's going through and measuring it, he can't do it anymore because it's too deep. It's the erotic love of God that's getting deeper and deeper and deeper. How's it getting deeper and deeper and deeper? I would suggest it's getting deeper and deeper and deeper through the incarnation and through the death of God and then through his ascension. So finally, in his ascension, that mighty river encompasses heaven and earth. You see? And so this is what we're all caught up in. This is the erotic desire in which we live, in which we move and have our being. So if you're single, as St. Paul would argue and have us understand, if you're single, well, you might consider staying that way. Not because to be married is an evil, not at all. But because if you're single, you don't have you can devote your whole energy, all of your faculties, to this to the work of devoting all of your erotica towards God and becoming filled with God. And as the monastics would say, becoming the bride of God. If you want to get married, St. Paul would say, okay, yes, that's okay. You're not committing any sin at all. You're not moving away from God at all. Because God created man in the beginning as male and female. So if you choose to get married, understand that when you get married, it's not to satisfy your lust. It's to with your spouse, it's to complete in yourself and to become fully an image of God as male and female, in which the erotic desire that the husband and wife have for one another becomes this movement, this erotic movement that we're seeing described in all of these texts, this erotic movement of self-giving, giving of myself to the other, and the joy, the pleasure, the tingle, all of those good things, the intensity that one feels, that the husband and wife feel in their marital union. That's all an image, a participation in this erotic union of the soul with God, which is open to everyone. Do you feel like you're understanding what I'm trying to say? So there are two ways in the church for us to fulfill our erotic desires. As it says in Psalm 103, the word he uses is he fills your epithemia. He fills your passionate, he fills your sexual desires with good things. He fills them with good things. Two ways to have our sexual desire, our sexual desire, our desire to belong to another, our desire to be in union with a beloved. Two ways to fulfill that in all of its intensity. Monasticism, or form of it, and marriage between man and woman. Now, look at those two ways. Is one easier than the other? I can't speak for the monastics, I can speak for man and wife. Those of you who are single, perhaps you can speak to the monastic. Is that an easy way? No. That's the answer. The answer is no. Is man and wife an easy way? I'll tell you, no.
No.
Well, actually, my wife will tell you, no.
Because both you can sin if you're not if you don't have that.
Because, here's the point, it's because in both, our erotic desire is perverted. We have given into our erotic desire in all kinds of perverse ways, all kinds of self-centered ways. And I won't name them, you can name them yourself. And so also in married life. You come into married life, your spouse brings out in you all of that in you that where you are undeveloped, where you're still shriveled and small, mean and petty. And you have to face that. Otherwise, you and your wife are going to have a dickens of a time the rest of your life. All right, Dan, I'll let you talk.
I'll speak for the married couple, but two can become one-centered, self-centered person too.
So then you have two.
Yeah, then you have
They're
two.
constantly like this.
And it's not outward, it's always inward.
Yes.
And that's
So that's the
tragedy.
fight. That's the fight. In both cases, the fight is to overcome my self-centered erotica and to purify my erotic desire, so that now it's moving in alignment with its nature, which is to unite with God.
But the two becoming one will move out from each other.
As they're centered, that's the beauty of marriage in the church. Remember, in the church, theoretically, ideally, man and woman have not come together yet. That's the way it should be, and ought to be, and let's do all we can to make it that way. Why? Because in the marriage, who marries you? Who joins you together? Even before you come together. Who joins you together? God joins you together. So now, in the marriage, your union is grounded. It's a spiritual union. It's grounded in God. And now in that spiritual union, in that spiritually consummated union, now you enjoy the physical intimacy. But you're also, the physical intimacy, that's what starts bringing out all of these perversion, all of these uglinesses, all of the undeveloped aspects of myself. But if I'm working on all of that, on the center of God's spiritual union, that's how it's going to be healed. Now that's how the man and the woman in their erotic love for one another can grow into and become an image of Christ and the church, of Adam and Eve. This is good. We got in much more than I intended to. But the final point that I was actually driving at, we didn't even finish Genesis 1:1-3, was I ask you to reflect on this and soak on it and see if you can begin to maybe at first it'll just be an intellectual thought, but I would ask that you continue to soak it even as an intellectual concept until finally maybe it starts to soak and to seep into your soul, and you begin to feel it in your soul that the whole creation is an embodiment of God's erotic love. The whole creation, heaven and earth, so that we're swimming in God's erotic love, every single one of us. Married, celibate, doesn't matter. Pure, perverse. If we're pure, then the way is open for us to feel the joy and experience the joie de vie that we experience in this erotic love of God. If we're perverse, the way is open for us to bring our perversity into those healing waters and to be healed of our perversity and to enter into the joie de vie that we're actually looking for in our perversions but aren't finding because they're not there. Here they are, in the beauty of the erotic love of Christ and His church. Erotic love of God. Questions, comments, observations?
But here's the point. And I'm not trying to contradict what you're saying, but I've heard this, and to be honest, it feels that way to me too. Adam was single. He had perfect communion with God, yet God Himself said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helpmeet." And I understand there's reasons why sometimes God keeps some of us single. In my case, it's because I have mental health issues. I understand that. I don't blame God for it, but it's still a heavy cross to carry, and I really don't agree that it's no big deal. It is a big deal to me. I'm trying to find a way to deal with it. That's part of the reason why, to be very honest, I feel very uncomfortable living in a society that is totally turned against everything that we believe in. I mean, we have a presidential candidate, and I don't want to get into politics. He's gay, and he says, well, the old America of the past wasn't so great for people like him. And I understand. I understand the struggles that people who are gay have too.
The point, Martin, is that you have to fight.
Yeah.
You have to fight.
Yeah.
But you can't fight it on your own.
I can't. No.
That's why you got to give yourself to the church. It sounds like you're fighting the church too, to be quite honest. Like you want what you want. You're not accepting what has been given to you. And that's perhaps the first step of your fight. My point is that whether you're celibate or married, even if you're married, Martin, you're going to have problems. And you may not be any happier than you are now. You may be just as lonely in your marriage as you are now. Hang on.
At this point, that probably would be the case because I wouldn't get to marry some good-looking young woman. And I probably would.
That too, well.
And I wouldn't get to have kids, which would feel very empty to me anyway. But I'm saying maybe this is the reason that makes me want to go to a place like Central America and get away from all
I hope you find what you're looking for, but you're not going to find it in Central America either. You're only going to find it in the church, and the church is everywhere. And that's the fight. It's not easy. I don't mean to say that it is. That's